The plasma blast shredded the embassy window just 3 seconds before the alarm system began to wail. Smoke and debris fell in flurries, making each step a dangerous one. In that moment of chaos, a human ambassador, in what seemed like a powerless diplomatic suit, stood up, eyes cold and calculating, ready to transform the luxurious building into a deadly trap. The Aria Nexus Embassy stood majestically on the crystal highlands of Gyros V, a high-value resource extraction center. The floating crystal lights illuminating the embassy's perimeter were testament to the tense trade relations between the colonial authority and Voss Consolidated. Ambassador Luke Carrington, a 35-year-old human recently appointed as a conflict diplomat, surveyed the room with practiced calm. His slender, scholarly appearance belied the experience hidden in his gaze. Beside him stood Commander Nissa Theron, a Yillar with emerald skin and piercing golden eyes. As Luke's personal security detail, she maintained an iron discipline and absolute faith in the eliminate and withdraw protocol for crisis situations. The year was 3247 by Standard Galactic Time. The future had brought plasma technology, artificial intelligence, and xenonet mind communication. From the embassy's panoramic windows, Luke could see the industrial mountain range and the deep mining shafts in the distance. Luke had been finalizing his peace speech, putting the last touches on his fair extraction agreement statement, while Nissa monitored security. Everything seemed normal as they prepared for the upcoming Chironite mining negotiations. "Ambassador, the reception begins in 30 minutes, announced Elena Santos, the embassy's communications director. Her holographic display showed the guest list, predominantly comprised of colonial authority representatives and a few Voss Consolidated executives. "Thank you, Elena. How's the security perimeter?" Luke asked, adjusting his formal attire. "All clear, sir. Commander Theron has tripled the sensors after yesterday's protest." Elena's eyes betrayed slight concern. "The local miners are restless about the negotiations." Luke nodded, running his fingers across the document one last time. "This agreement should address their concerns: fair compensation, environmental safeguards, and proper—" The blast came without warning. Plasma fire cut through the reinforced crystal window like it was paper, instantly triggering the internal defense mechanisms. The beautiful crystal lights outside flickered and dimmed as emergency protocols engaged. "Red alert!" Nissa shouted, her golden eyes widening as she grabbed Luke's arm. "Ambassador, we need to get to the secure bunker now." Luke pulled back as Nissa tried to drag him toward the safety corridor. "No, Commander, we cannot retreat." "It's protocol, Ambassador. My orders are to extract you immediately in case of—" "We need to fight," Luke interrupted, his voice suddenly hard and commanding. "We cannot let them destroy this diplomatic mission." Through the comm system, they heard Elena's panicked voice. "Perimeter breach confirmed. Mercenary troops wearing Voss Consolidated insignia. They've cut our communications with Solar Alliance headquarters and disabled the automated defense systems." Nissa's face hardened. "All the more reason to extract you immediately, Ambassador." Luke looked at her directly, his calm demeanor transforming into something else entirely, the look of a tactician assessing a battlefield. "If we run, they win. This embassy represents more than just a building, Commander. It stands for peace, for justice, for the rights of all species working in those mines. I will not abandon it." Before Nissa could protest further, Luke activated his personal comm. "Elena, I need you to redirect emergency control to my station. Transfer power from the crystal light arrays to the structural support conduits." "Sir?" Elena's voice was uncertain. "Do it now, and get me Corindexol from maintenance." Nissa watched with growing confusion as Luke began rapidly accessing embassy schematics on the main display. "Ambassador, what are you doing?" "Setting traps, Commander," Luke replied without looking up. "We're going to turn this embassy into a killing field." The golden eyes of the Yillar security chief widened in shock. "You're a diplomat." Luke finally looked up, a ghost of a smile on his lips. "What if I'm not just a diplomat?" Within minutes, Luke had gathered the embassy's key personnel in the central operations room. Corin Dexal, a four-armed Yillar, retired mining foreman, now heading the maintenance team, stood next to Dr. Kelvasuri, a planetary biologist specializing in xenobiology. Elena managed communications from a makeshift console, while Nisa reluctantly coordinated the security team under Luke's unexpected orders. "The mercenaries have breached the East Wing," Elena reported, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces. "They're systematically disabling our security nodes." Luke nodded, examining the 3D projection of the embassy. "Corin, how quickly can you convert the maintenance tools into close-quarter weapons?" The four-armed Illar blinked in surprise. "The plasma cutters can be recalibrated within minutes. But we're maintenance staff, not fighters. Today, we're both," Luke replied firmly. "Dr. Vesuri, our medical supplies. Any chance of repurposing them to counter their tech?" The Willar physician considered for a moment. "The xenobiological inhibitors could potentially disrupt their biosensors. I could aerosolize them to create a temporary blindness effect." "Perfect. Get on it." Luke turned to Nissa, who was watching him with growing fascination and confusion. "Commander, I need your team to set up ambush points here, here, and here." He pointed to key junctions in the embassy layout. "Place crystal fragments at strategic angles. When plasma fire hits them, they'll shatter and create shrapnel storms." Nissa's golden eyes narrowed. "That's a military tactic. How would a diplomat know?" "No time for questions, Commander." Luke cut her off. "Elena, can you tap into their comms?" "Working on it, sir. Their encryption is complex, but I'm detecting patterns." As the team dispersed to execute Luke's orders, Nissa lingered. "Ambassador, I don't understand. Your file said nothing about combat experience." Luke was silent for a moment, then rolled up his left sleeve slightly, revealing a faded scar pattern, distinctive of plasma rifle burns. "Some files are more complete than others. Commander, now, shall we defend our embassy?" The first attack came 20 minutes later. Mechanized mercenaries with energy armor and plasma launchers breached the main hall. Luke and Nissa led the defense team, using light-reflecting devices to create blind zones that caused the enemy's sensors to malfunction. "Push them back toward the secondary corridor," Luke commanded, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Corin, now!" The four-armed maintenance chief activated a recalibrated crystal polisher, creating a disorienting light pattern that confused the mercenaries' targeting systems. Meanwhile, Dr. Vesuri's aerosolized compounds were pumped through the ventilation system, causing the organic components of the enemy's biosensors to fail. From her makeshift command center, Elena managed to intercept encrypted communications. "Ambassador, I've broken into their secure frequency. It's worse than we thought. Voss Consolidated isn't just after the Chironite reserves. They're planning to eliminate all witnesses to secure exclusive mining rights. Their main targets include the lawyers and journalists who were planning to expose the situation." Luke processed this information as he coordinated another defensive maneuver. "So it's not just about resources. It's about covering up a potential genocide." Nissa fought alongside Luke, her combat training evident in every precise movement. Yet, her mind was in turmoil. "I always thought Luke was just a non-combatant diplomat, but he's coordinating every move like a battle-hardened general. Should I force him to evacuate as per protocol, or continue supporting this fight?" As the battle intensified, Luke made a strategic decision. "We need to move to the mines. The tunnels will give us tactical advantage. Confined spaces will neutralize their numerical superiority." "The mines?" Nissa questioned. "That's outside the embassy grounds. Protocol dictates—" "Protocol won't save the miners when Voss Consolidated eliminates all witnesses," Luke interrupted. Corrin knows those tunnels. We can set traps that will be far more effective than anything we can do here." With reluctance, Nissa agreed, and they led a strategic withdrawal into the underground mining complex. Corrin guided them through narrow passages, explaining the layout and operations as they moved deeper. "The main crusher station is 3 levels down," Corrin explained, as they navigated the labyrinthine tunnels. "If we overload the gravity modulators, we could create a shockwave through the main corridor." Luke nodded, already formulating a plan. "Nissa, position your team at these junction points. We'll funnel them toward the crusher chamber." As they prepared their defenses, Elena maintained communication from her hidden position in the embassy. "They've split their forces. Half are still searching the embassy, but the other half have discovered your trail to the mines." "Perfect," Luke replied. "That reduces our opposition by half. How many are coming our way?" "Thermal signatures suggest 20, including their leader, someone called Captain Ray." Luke's expression darkened. "Ray? Are you certain?" "Yes, why? Do you know him?" "We've crossed paths," Luke replied cryptically. "Everyone, prepare for contact. Dr. Vesuri, deploy your compounds at the tunnel entrances. Corrin, start the crusher overload sequence, but keep it under threshold for now." Nissa observed Luke with growing curiosity. The diplomat's knowledge of combat tactics and his reaction to the mercenary leader's name suggested a history far more complex than his official biography indicated. The confrontation came in the main mining hall, where the reflective ore surfaces created a disorienting light show. Captain Ray, a hulking figure with integrated AI tactical modules visible along his temple, led the mercenary force into the chamber. "A diplomat hiding in a mine," Ray's voice boomed, augmented by his combat suit. "How appropriate that you'll be buried here." Luke stepped forward, much to Nissa's alarm. "Hello, Ray. Still taking contracts to kill civilians?" The mercenary leader paused, his enhanced optical implants focusing on Luke. You're supposed to be just a diplomat." "A common misconception," Luke replied calmly. Then, without warning, he gave a signal. "Now!" The trap was sprung. The previously positioned crystal fragments exploded as Nissa's team fired precisely calibrated plasma bursts, sending deadly shards in all directions. Simultaneously, Corrin activated the mining equipment, creating a moving barrier of mechanical arms that separated the mercenary forces. In the chaos, Luke moved with surprising speed and skill toward Captain Ray. The mercenary leader, relying on his tactical AI to predict movements, found himself increasingly frustrated as Luke exploited the plasma reflective properties of the mine floor to create unpredictable attack angles. "How is a diplomat outmaneuvering my combat AI?" Ray snarled, his plasma blade slashing through the air, where Luke had been a split second earlier. "Perhaps your AI needs better data," Luke replied, sliding under a mechanical conveyor and emerging behind Ray. "Or perhaps diplomats aren't what they used to be." The battle raged across the mining chamber. Nissa led her team with precision, but found herself increasingly distracted by Luke's impossible combat prowess. When a mercenary nearly flanked the ambassador, Nissa eliminated the threat with a precise shot, only to find Luke already aware and moving to counter. Their eyes met briefly across the chaotic battlefield, and Nissa felt something shift in her understanding of this human she had sworn to protect. The climactic moment came when Luke lured Captain Ray to the main crusher platform. The mercenary, confident in his superior strength and armor, pressed his advantage, forcing Luke toward the edge of the platform. "End of the line, diplomat," Ray growled, his plasma blade humming with deadly energy. "Actually," Luke replied, "it's the end of your line." He tapped a command into his wrist unit. Instantly, Corrin's sabotage of the crusher system activated. The gravity modulators overloaded, creating a focused shockwave that rippled through the platform. Ray, caught unprepared, stumbled as his AI targeting system momentarily failed. In that crucial moment, Luke struck with precision, targeting the weakness in Rey's armor, where the AI modules connected to the neural interface. The mercenary captain fell to his knees, his systems failing. "You were never just a diplomat," Rey gasped as his systems shut down. "I am exactly what the situation requires," Luke replied. "Sometimes that's a peacemaker. Sometimes it's a warrior." As Rey collapsed, Nyssa fought her way to Luke's side, her golden eyes wide with a mixture of awe and confusion. But there was no time to talk. The secondary mercenary force had discovered their location and was converging on the mining complex. "Elena, now!" Luke commanded through the comm. Back in the embassy, Elena executed the final part of their plan. She broadcast all the intercepted Voss consolidated communications to the Colonial Alliance satellite, exposing their plan to eliminate all witnesses to secure exclusive mining rights. The effect was immediate. As the evidence of their crimes was transmitted across the galaxy, the mercenary force began to disintegrate. Their unified command structure collapsed as individual soldiers realized they were now implicated in a publicly exposed genocide attempt. "They're retreating!" Corrin shouted, monitoring the tunnel sensors. "The second group is abandoning their advance." Luke nodded grimly. "They know it's over. Their employers will be distancing themselves from this operation as we speak." As the immediate danger passed, Luke, Nyssa, Corrin, and Dr. Vesuri led the maintenance team out of the crumbling mine. The crusher's overload had triggered secondary collapses, and plasma fires shot up from the grinding chambers like beacons of burning justice. During their ascent to the surface, Nyssa finally found a moment to confront Luke. "You were never just an ambassador, were you?" Luke paused, looking at her with tired but clear eyes. "I am an ambassador, Nyssa. But before that, I was many other things. Intelligence, special operations? Does it matter now?" Luke asked softly. Nyssa considered this, her golden eyes reflecting the distant plasma fires. "I've spent my career following protocols, believing that my only responsibility was to protect you at all costs. Today, I realize something." "What's that?" "I don't want to just protect you. I want to fight alongside you." Her voice carried a new emotion, something beyond professional duty. "When I saw you facing Rey, I hesitated, not because I was afraid, but because I was in awe. No one has ever made me question my training before." Luke's expression softened. "The best diplomats understand that sometimes words aren't enough. Sometimes you need to be willing to fight for peace." As they emerged from the mine, they saw Colonial Authority shuttles descending toward the embassy. Elena had not only exposed Voss Consolidated's plan, but had managed to request reinforcements. 2 weeks later, aboard a shuttle bound for the colonial capital, Luke and Nyssa stood side by side, watching the spaceport through the viewport. Luke had been nominated for promotion to High Commissioner Representative and was now leading the investigation into the Voss Consolidated scandal. Nyssa had been appointed Senior Security Specialist, leaving behind her role as a mere bodyguard following outdated orders. "I always thought a diplomatic representative couldn't step onto the battlefield," Luke said quietly as they watched the stars. "But I was wrong. And perhaps we should continue this journey together, not just as leader and protector, but as allies." Nyssa's golden eyes softened in the starlight. "My orders once were to save you from all danger, but now I choose to stand with you to face every danger." They stepped onto the transport ship docked at the spaceport, heading toward the Century system, where new conflicts loomed with the Dyran Industries Alliance. The final image, Luke and Nyssa side by side, their gaze fixed on the stars, determined to fight for justice across all species boundaries. As the ship's engines hummed to life, Luke caught Nyssa's gaze. "You know, there's something I never told you about my time before becoming an ambassador." "What's that?" she asked. golden eyes curious. I never enjoyed fighting. I was good at it, too good, perhaps. But I always believed there had to be a better way. Luke looked out at the stars streaking past as they entered hyperspace. That's why I became a diplomat. Not to escape my past, but to build a better future. Nissa considered his words. And yet, when the embassy was attacked, you didn't hesitate to fight. Because sometimes fighting is necessary to protect the peace we're trying to build. He turned to face her fully. The difference is knowing when to fight and when to talk. That's what makes a true diplomat in this galaxy. And a true warrior, Nissa added softly. Their ship accelerated into the depths of space, carrying not just an ambassador and his security chief, but two people who had discovered something profound about themselves and each other amid chaos and danger. The diplomatic mission continued, but it was forever transformed, just as they were. As they approached the Century System, several days later, news of their stand against Voss Consolidated had spread throughout colonial space. The miners on Gyros V had organized into a cooperative, negotiating directly with the colonial authority for fair extraction rights. Elena had been appointed communication liaison, while Corin and Dr. Vesuri led safety and environmental oversight committees. Incoming transmission from colonial headquarters, announced the ship's AI. Priority Alpha. Luke exchanged a glance with Nissa before accepting the call. A holographic projection materialized, showing Admiral Costa of the Colonial Security Council. Ambassador Carrington, Commander Theron, the Admiral began formally. The Council has reviewed your actions on Gyros V. Unorthodox doesn't begin to describe your approach. Luke maintained his diplomatic composure. We adapted to the situation as it developed, Admiral. Indeed. The Admiral's stern expression cracked slightly. And in doing so, you exposed a conspiracy that would have resulted in the deaths of thousands of miners. The Council is impressed. Nissa stood straighter, her golden eyes betraying surprise. Your new assignment in the Century System has been upgraded, the Admiral continued. Dyron Industries has been employing similar tactics to what we saw with Voss Consolidated. We need your unique approach to diplomacy to address the situation. Understood, Admiral, Luke replied. We'll handle it. As the transmission ended, Nissa turned to Luke. Unique approach to diplomacy? Is that what they're calling it now? Luke smiled, a rare, full smile that transformed his scholarly features. Diplomacy, by any means necessary. Commander Theron. Something tells me we're going to redefine the role of diplomatic envoys in the colonial authority. I can think of worse legacies, Nissa replied, returning his smile with one of her own. Their ship continued its journey toward new challenges, carrying two individuals who had found in each other not just professional respect, but a deeper connection forged in fire and tempered by shared purpose. The diplomat and the warrior, roles now blurred and intertwined, ready to face whatever awaited them among the stars. Upon reaching the Century System, Luke and Nissa were immediately thrust into a tense situation. Dyron Industries had established a processing facility on Century Prime that was dumping toxic byproducts into waterways used by the indigenous Makari, a semi-aquatic species with deep cultural ties to their water systems. As their shuttle descended toward the colonial outpost, Luke studied the information displays, while Nissa monitored security channels. The situation is deteriorating, Luke observed. Dyron has private security forces patrolling the waterways, preventing the Makari from accessing their ancestral pools. Nissa's golden eyes narrowed. Just like Voss, they're using mercenaries to enforce corporate policy. With one key difference, Luke added. These waters aren't just resources to the Makari. They're sacred. This isn't just economic oppression, it's cultural genocide. The shuttle landed on a platform overlooking a vast, turquoise lake, surrounded by processing facilities. They were greeted by the local colonial representative, a nervous human named Jordan Hayes. Ambassador Carrington, Commander Theron, Hayes began. I must warn you, Dyren's regional director is displeased by your arrival. After what happened with Voss Consolidated, they view you as a threat. Luke smiled diplomatically. Good. They should. The meeting with Dyren's leadership was held in a sterile conference room overlooking the main processing plant. Director Elaine Mercer, a sharp-featured woman with cybernetic enhancements visible at her temples, made no effort to hide her contempt. The Colonial Authority is overstepping its bounds, she stated flatly. Dyren Industries has legal extraction rights to all resources in this quadrant. Water is not just a resource to the Makari, Luke countered calmly. And your processing methods are contaminating their sacred pools with neurotoxins that are causing birth defects. Mercer waved a dismissive hand. The Makari signed agreements. Under duress and without full disclosure, Luke interrupted. We've seen the original documents. Your translators deliberately mistranslated key provisions. The director's enhanced eyes flickered, a tell that Luke noticed immediately. Beside him, Nyssa tensed almost imperceptibly. Careful, Ambassador, Mercer said coldly. Accusations like that could be considered inflammatory. We wouldn't want a repeat of the unfortunate violence on Gyros V. Is that a threat, Director Mercer? Nyssa asked, her voice dangerously calm. A concern for safety, Commander. Mercer smiled thinly. This region can be unstable. As they left the meeting, Nyssa spoke quietly. She's already planning something. Her security detail was communicating throughout the meeting. Luke nodded. I saw it too. We need to move quickly. Contact the Makari elders. I want to meet with them tonight, not tomorrow as scheduled. That means going into their underwater chambers. The Colonial Authority hasn't authorized... I'm authorizing it, Luke stated firmly. Sometimes, asking forgiveness is easier than asking permission, especially when lives are at stake. That evening, using specialized breathing apparatus, Luke and Nyssa descended into the luminescent underwater caverns, where the Makari conducted their council meetings. The elders, tall, sleek beings with iridescent scales and elaborate fin structures, regarded the humans with cautious hope. Elder Vashti, her scales shimmering with age and wisdom, addressed them in the musical tones of the Makari language, which their translators rendered into standard galactic. Ambassador, we have heard of your actions on Gyros V. You are not what we expected from the Colonial Authority. Sometimes expectations limit us. Elder Vashti, Luke replied. I believe Dyren Industries is planning to escalate their actions against your people. We need to move quickly to protect your waters. The elder's large, liquid eyes studied him carefully. What do you propose? More words on papers that Dyren will ignore? No, Luke said firmly. I propose we gather evidence of their violations tonight and transmit it directly to the Colonial Council. But I need your help. The plan they formulated was daring. While Luke would create a diplomatic distraction by calling an emergency session with Dyren's leadership, Nyssa would guide a team of Makari scouts to document the illegal dumping operations that Dyren conducted during the night cycle when they believed no one was watching. Be careful, Luke told Nyssa as they prepared to part ways. Mercer is not like the mercenaries on Gyros V. She's calculated, patient. Nyssa's golden eyes met his. I think you're the one who should be careful. You'll be alone with their entire leadership team. Not entirely alone, Luke replied with a slight smile, tapping a concealed device in his collar. Elena designed some new toys for us after Gyros V. This will record and transmit everything directly to Colonial Headquarters. As predicted, Dyren's leadership was furious at being summoned for an emergency meeting. Director Mercer arrived flanked by security personnel, her enhanced eyes gleaming with barely contained rage. This had better be important, Ambassador, she snapped. Oh, it is, Luke assured her, activating a holographic display. I've been reviewing your processing methodologies. Fascinating stuff. Did you know that the filtration system you're using was outlawed in 3 sectors due to its tendency to produce Class 4 neurotoxins as byproducts? Mercer's expression remained controlled. Our systems meet all colonial regulations. Current regulations, yes, Luke agreed amiably. But I've taken the liberty of proposing amendments based on new research from the Galactic Environmental Consortium. They'll be implemented next month, and unfortunately, your entire operation will be in violation. As Luke kept the Dyran leadership distracted with regulatory minutiae, Nissa and the Makari scouts slipped through the facility's drainage systems. What they discovered exceeded their worst expectations. Dyran wasn't just dumping processing waste. They were deliberately poisoning the sacred pools to drive the Makari away from resource-rich areas. Recording everything, Nissa whispered to the Makari scout beside her as they documented massive tanks of concentrated toxins being pumped directly into the underground river systems. This is genocide, plain and simple. Their infiltration was proceeding perfectly until an automated security drone detected their heat signatures. Alarms blared throughout the facility. In the conference room, Director Mercer's comm unit lit up. Her enhanced eyes flickered to Luke with sudden understanding. "This meeting was a diversion," she hissed, standing abruptly. "Security! Detain the ambassador!" Luke remained seated, remarkably calm as guards moved toward him. "I wouldn't do that, Director. Not if you value your corporation's future." "Empty threats won't save your operative, Ambassador," Mercer snarled. "It's not a threat," Luke replied, activating his collar device. The room's displays suddenly came to life, showing Nissa's live feed of the illegal dumping operation. "It's already done. This is being transmitted to the Colonial Council as we speak. Your operation is finished." Mercer's composure finally cracked. "Kill him and find the other one!" The guards hesitated, looking at the damning evidence on the screens, and then at each other. Luke stood slowly. "Your guards are colonial citizens. Director, they know the penalty for murdering a diplomatic envoy. Life imprisonment on Tartarus Station. Is that a sacrifice you've discussed with them?" The security team's weapons lowered slightly, uncertainty evident in their posture. Meanwhile, Nissa and the Makari scouts found themselves cornered in the lower levels of the facility as Dyran security forces closed in. "We need an exit," Nissa said urgently, scanning their surroundings. Her eyes fell on a pressure valve system. "There. If we rupture those coolant lines, it will trigger the emergency protocols. All security doors will open automatically." "But the toxins," the Makari scout warned. "If the coolant mixes with the processing chemicals, it will create a localized reaction." "Yes," Nissa acknowledged. "But it will also provide evidence that can't be erased. Sometimes, we must take calculated risks." With precision born from years of training, Nissa targeted the junction point where the coolant system met the main processing line. The resulting reaction was immediate. Alarms blared at an even higher intensity, and emergency systems engaged throughout the facility. In the conference room, the chaos provided Luke with the opportunity he needed. As the security team's attention wavered, he moved with practiced efficiency, disarming the nearest guard and using him as a shield against the others. "Director Mercer," Luke called out calmly amid the chaos. "You have 2 choices. Surrender peacefully and cooperate with the colonial investigation, or face charges of attempted murder of a diplomatic envoy in addition to ecological genocide. Choose wisely." The director's enhanced eyes darted around, calculating odds that grew worse by the second, as colonial authority emergency responses were automatically triggered by the facility's alarm systems. "This isn't over, Ambassador," she snarled, but her security team was already standing down, recognizing the futility of resistance. Luke allowed himself a small smile. "It is for you, Director." Nissa and the Makari scouts emerged from the facility as colonial security forces arrived in response to the emergency signals. The evidence they had gathered, combined with the facility's own emergency logs detailing the chemical mixtures in their systems, provided irrefutable proof of Dairon's crimes. Hours later, as colonial enforcement units took control of the Dairon facility and medical teams began assessing the contamination levels in the Makari waters, Luke and Nissa stood on an observation platform overlooking the turquoise lake. "You took a significant risk," Luke said quietly. "Rupturing those coolant lines could have caused a much larger reaction." Nissa's golden eyes met his. "I calculated the probabilities. It was an acceptable risk to secure the evidence. Just like I calculated the risk of keeping Mercer's security team talking until colonial forces arrived," Luke replied, with a hint of a smile. "We seem to be developing similar thought patterns, Commander." "Perhaps that's not surprising," Nissa observed. "We've been through combat together now. That changes people, creates bonds." Luke was silent for a moment, looking out over the waters that would now have a chance to heal. "When I first became an ambassador, I thought I was leaving behind the person I used to be. The fighter, the operative, the man who solved problems with tactical thinking instead of words. And now I understand that true diplomacy requires both, the willingness to talk and the readiness to act." He turned to face her fully. "Just as true protection isn't about blindly following evacuation protocols, but about making the hard choices needed to secure actual safety." Nissa nodded, her normally rigid posture softening slightly. "The Yillar have a saying, 'The strongest shield is one that knows when to become a sword.'" "Wise people, the Yillar," Luke said with genuine admiration. "Most of the time," Nissa agreed with the barest hint of a smile. "Though some of us need a human diplomat to teach us when to break protocol." As colonial ships descended to begin the cleanup operation, Luke received a priority communication from colonial headquarters. The Council was expanding their mandate, creating a new division specifically tasked with investigating corporate abuses on frontier worlds. They wanted Luke and Nissa to lead it. "Diplomacy with teeth," Luke mused after reading the communique. "What do you think, Commander? Ready to redefine interstellar relations?" Nissa's golden eyes gleamed with something that might have been excitement. "I believe we've already started, Ambassador." As they boarded their shuttle to return to colonial headquarters for their new assignment, both knew that they had crossed a threshold, not just professionally, but personally. The diplomat and the warrior had found in each other the missing elements of their own identities, creating something stronger and more effective than either could have been alone. The stars awaited them, along with corporations that exploited the vulnerable, criminals who preyed on the weak, and systems that favored the powerful. But now, the galaxy had something new: diplomats who fought and warriors who negotiated, working together to forge a more just future among the stars. In the months that followed, Luke and Nissa's reputation grew throughout colonial space. Their unique approach to diplomatic crises, combining traditional negotiation with strategic action when necessary, earned them both admirers and enemies. They became known as the Diplomatic Intervention Team, a designation that some colonial officials used with pride and others with trepidation. Their missions took them from the gaseous upper atmosphere communities of Altair Prime, where corporations were harvesting rare gases with no regard for the native floating organisms, to the artificial habitats orbiting Proxima Centauri, where labor rights were being systematically violated. Each time, they arrived as diplomats but acted as whatever the situation demanded: negotiators, investigators, sometimes warriors. After a particularly challenging mission involving a standoff between colonial miners and indigenous crystal entities on Vega III, Luke and Nissa found themselves with a rare moment of respite aboard their diplomatic vessel. The ship's observation lounge offered a panoramic view of the galaxy's spiral arm, stars scattered like diamonds on black velvet. Nyssa entered to find Luke standing at the viewport, silhouetted against the starfield. She had come to recognize the slight tension in his shoulders that indicated he was deep in thought. "Credit for your thoughts, Ambassador?" she asked, moving to stand beside him. Luke's reflection smiled slightly in the transparent aluminum of the viewport. "I was thinking about patterns, Commander. The colonies, the corporations, the conflicts. They're all variations on a theme as old as civilization itself. Power and its abuses," Nyssa suggested. "Exactly." Luke turned to face her. "We solve one crisis, expose one corporation, negotiate one peace, and 3 more situations arise elsewhere. Sometimes I wonder if we're making any difference at all." This vulnerability was something Nyssa had only recently begun to witness in him. The public saw Ambassador Carrington as unfailingly confident, a diplomatic force of nature. Only she saw these moments of doubt. "We make a difference to those we help," she said firmly. "The Makari will tell their children about how their waters were saved. The miners on Gyros 5 now have fair contracts and safety regulations. We may not change the entire pattern, but we change its expression in the lives we touch." Luke studied her face. The golden eyes that had once been merely attentive to duty, now alight with passion for their shared mission. "When did you become the optimist in this partnership, Commander Theron?" "Perhaps when a certain diplomat showed me that protocols and duty are meaningless without purpose behind them," she replied, her voice softer than usual. The moment between them stretched, filled with things unsaid, yet increasingly understood. Since Gyros V, their professional relationship had evolved into something deeper, a partnership of equals, built on mutual respect and growing affection. The ship's AI interrupted the moment. "Ambassador Carrington, incoming priority transmission from Colonial Headquarters." Luke sighed. The respite was nice while it lasted. "Put it through." The holographic display activated, showing Admiral Costa. His expression was grave. "Ambassador, Commander, we have a situation that requires your immediate attention. The Arcturian Federation has accused colonial mining operations of violating sovereign territory. They're threatening military action." Luke and Nyssa exchanged glances. The Arcturians were a major power, not a vulnerable indigenous population or exploited workers. This was interstellar politics at the highest level. "The Council believes your unconventional approach may be what's needed," the Admiral continued. "The Arcturians respect strength and directness. Traditional diplomatic niceties have only escalated the situation." "We'll set course immediately," Luke assured him. "Send us all available intelligence." After the transmission ended, Nyssa turned to Luke. "The Arcturians are warriors by culture. They'll be expecting traditional diplomats they can intimidate." Luke's expression shifted subtly. The contemplative man replaced by the strategic thinker. "Then, let's show them something different. Set course for Arcturus. Maximum speed." The Arcturian crisis represented a new scale of challenge. Unlike their previous missions dealing with corporate exploitation, this involved potential war between major powers. The colonial mining operation had inadvertently crossed into disputed space. But rather than negotiate, the Arcturians had deployed their fearsome battlecruisers to the border. Upon arrival, Luke requested a direct meeting with the Arcturian War Council, rather than going through diplomatic channels. It was unprecedented, and exactly the kind of move that caught the militaristic Arcturians' attention. The Arcturian Grand Hall was designed to intimidate, with towering pillars of black stone and war trophies displayed prominently. The War Council, 7 battle-scarred veterans, sat on elevated seats looking down at the diplomatic party. "Ambassador Carrington," Chief Counselor Drax acknowledged with barely concealed disdain. "You are either very brave or very foolish to request direct audience." Luke stepped forward, his diplomatic attire more austere than usual, almost military in its simplicity. Nyssa stood at his side, her posture conveying readiness rather than deference. "I come before this council, not to offer platitudes or excuses," Luke began, his voice carrying easily through the vast hall. "The colonial mining operation crossed the boundary of disputed territory. This is fact." Murmurs rippled through the watching Arcturians. They had expected denials or equivocation. "However," Luke continued, "deploying battlecruisers as first response suggests the Arcturian Federation seeks conflict rather than resolution." Chief Counselor Drax leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "You dare question our military response to territorial violation?" "I question its wisdom," Luke replied calmly. "War between our peoples would be devastating to both. The Arcturus sector would become a graveyard of ships and hopes. Is that the legacy this council wishes to build?" "You speak of war as if you understand it, Diplomat," another counselor scoffed. Luke's expression remained impassive, but those who knew him well, like Nissa, recognized the slight shift in his stance. He removed his outer diplomatic robe, revealing the fitted tunic beneath, and the distinctive scars on his forearms that only battle-hardened veterans would recognize. "I understand war well enough to prefer peace, Counselor," Luke stated. "But if peace is not possible, the colonial authority is prepared for other outcomes." The atmosphere in the hall changed perceptibly. The Arcturians respected few things more than battle experience. This was not the soft diplomat they had expected. "What do you propose, Ambassador Carrington?" Chief Counselor Drax asked, his tone markedly more respectful. "Joint oversight of the disputed territory, shared mining rights with equal distribution of resources, a buffer zone patrolled by ships from both our fleets." Luke laid out his proposal concisely. "And immediate withdrawal of battlecruisers in exchange for the colonial authority's formal acknowledgement of Arcturian sovereign claims in the Deneb sector." The council members exchanged glances. The Deneb acknowledgement was something they had sought for decades through conventional diplomacy, without success. "You offer Deneb for peace?" Drax asked skeptically. "I offer fair exchange that benefits both our peoples," Luke corrected. "War serves neither. Trade and mutual respect serve both." After hours of negotiation, an agreement was reached. The Arcturians would withdraw their battle fleet in exchange for formal recognition of certain territorial claims and joint development rights in the disputed zone. It was a diplomatic victory that averted war while establishing new protocols for cooperation. As they departed Arcturus aboard their ship, Nissa found Luke in his quarters, reviewing the final treaty text. "The Admiral has sent congratulations," she informed him. "The Council is calling it a masterpiece of diplomatic resolution." Luke looked up from the document, fatigue evident in his eyes. "It was close, Nissa. The Arcturians were ready for war. But they responded to strength," she observed, taking a seat across from him. "Not the strength of weapons, but the strength of someone who understands both war and peace." "It's a delicate balance," Luke admitted. "Show too much warrior, and diplomacy fails. Show too much diplomat, and warriors see only weakness to exploit." "Perhaps that's why we make an effective team," Nissa suggested. "Between us, we maintain that balance." Luke's eyes met hers, warm with affection and professional respect. "More than effective, I'd say. I couldn't have done this without you, Nissa." The formality that had once defined their relationship had gradually dissolved over their shared missions. He rarely called her Commander in private now, and she had begun to think of him as simply Luke, rather than Ambassador Carrington. "The Arcturian Chief Counselor asked me something interesting after the session," Nissa said after a moment. "He wanted to know if all colonial diplomatic teams were like us, or if we were unique." Luke smiled. "And what did you tell him?" "That the colonial authority is evolving, adapting to a galaxy where traditional boundaries between diplomacy and action are becoming outdated." She paused. "And that you and I were perhaps the first expression of that evolution, but unlikely to be the last. A diplomatic corps that understands when words fail Luke mused. It could change everything. It already has, Nisa replied softly. At least for us. In that quiet moment aboard their ship, surrounded by the vastness of space, the diplomat and the warrior acknowledged what had been growing between them through shared danger and triumph. A bond that transcended professional partnership, cultural differences, and their own preconceptions about themselves and each other. The galaxy would continue to present challenges. Corporations would exploit, powers would threaten, the vulnerable would suffer. But in Luke and Nissa, a new approach had been born. One that combined the best of diplomacy's wisdom with the necessary resolve to act when words alone were not enough. And perhaps, in this fusion of approaches, the seeds of a more just future among the stars had been planted, not through grand proclamations or overwhelming force, but through the partnership of two individuals who had found in each other the missing pieces of themselves, becoming together something greater than either could have been alone. As their ship set course for their next mission, Luke and Nisa stood together on the bridge, watching the stars streak into the blur of hyperspace. Whatever challenges awaited them, they would face them as they had come to face everything, side by side, the diplomat and the warrior, forging a new path among the stars.